on to the lady of the hour, Miss Ellissia Price-Fagin. Okay, I'm not going to give too much away because she's going to have a lot to say in this talk. But she received her BA in sociology in 1966, and her teaching credentials in 1967 as well at USD. And then she also received her MAT from Trinity University in 1972. She's had a very long career in elementary school systems. She's been an elementary counseling specialist, a school counselor, and an elementary teacher at Fairfax County Public Schools in Washington, D.C. And she has extensive experience in diverse populations and learning environments. She also was awarded the Elementary School Counselor of the Year in 1983 by the American School Counselor Association. And she's currently the chair of the St. Augustine Catholic Church Black History Committee. And I did want to let you know that she did have a lot more honors and awards, but there's too much to fit on the PowerPoint, so I had to take some off, but she's been awarded many things in her life. And she's also the Virginia Counselors Association Foundation President-elect. She's married to Bruce Fagin and currently lives in Washington, D.C., so she is 3 hours ahead, but she's a night owl, so she's with us talking today. She loves reading, she loves singing in her church, participating on counseling boards and our alumni network, and also volunteering her time at different ministries. So if we all can just give Ellissia a round of applause for joining us today as we—
Yay, Ellissia!
Yes.
Yeah, Maria.
I was the only Black student who was a boarder when I came there. It was it 63, and I left in 64. So I didn't finish, but Ellissia and I have remained close friends all these years. She was my first American friend.
Oh, we're so happy to have you.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't see anybody. My phone isn't acting right.
Okay. Hopefully we'll figure it out though.
Okay.
All right, Ellissia, so why don't we kind of tell people about, your upbringing. So you grew up in San Diego, and if you can give us a little bit of a background on what it was like growing up as a young girl in San Diego.
Okay, well, San Diego, African Americans made up 5% of the population. We're up to 6% now, but we were always a minority under another minority. And I grew up in a mission Jesuit parish that had African Americans, Hispanics, Caribbean folks, and a few whites. And it was a very tiny parish, but it was very multicultural and very diverse. So it was a great experience growing up like that. My dad had been in the Navy and retired from the Navy after 27 years in San Diego, because he had been in and out of San Diego all those years. But I was actually born in Rhode Island, and I'm an adoptee. So I told Kelsey, one of the things I've been doing is genealogy, because I didn't find out I was adopted till I was 22, and getting married at the time, and it was like married was more important than being told I was adopted. And I left home at that time. We went to DC, and only about 3 years ago I actually was able to get my original birth certificate, and because each state is different about the rules. I get the birth certificate. I'd actually had a name, and I knew my mother's name, and it was Portuguese. So I kind of figured out it was Cape Verdean since I was born in Rhode Island. I didn't know what to expect when I got the birth certificate. In terms of my mother, it turns out she was listed as colored, but I was listed as white. So I was a little shocked, to say the least, but I figured by the time I got off the train I was brought to DC, from Rhode Island to California on the train the first month of my life. I browned up, and you see what I look like now. So hey, a year later I was adopted. I was Black. I don't know. Hey, so I'm still researching all of that craziness. But I went to all Catholic schools, starting in first grade, matter of fact, all the way through grad school. And I'm still Catholic, which is, pretty good for, African-American little soul. And that, I was a boarder. I wasn't a boarder. I was a day student. And so one of the things about that being a day student was I went home to my family and my friends, who were African American and Mexican American. So I had that nice little sheltered kind of life. And my parents didn't talk about what went on in terms of prejudice or anything else until I started asking questions when I saw things on television in terms of the civil rights movement. So basically, there were only 4 of us in my grammar school, class of 53. There were a few more in my high school, but that was it. So being by myself or being one of a few was not a new thing for me.
Mm,
Okay.
that's good. So you said boarder. So for those who don't know what that means, a boarder is someone who lives at campus, right?
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
Maria was. Maria was a
Okay.
boarder. Yeah, and I was a
Okay.
day student. Okay.
Okay, that's right. So
Okay.
why did you choose to come to USD? I mean, I know it's Catholic, but it is white. And why did you choose to want to stay in San Diego?
Okay. My father told me I was going to college. So I had, other than that, I didn't know anything else, but I was going to college. Well, and when I was a senior in high school, they had a poetry contest. And the award ceremony was up on the campus. And here's the little trophy that I got.
Oh, yes.
First place.
Oh my gosh.
And it was given by the Catholic Daughters of America. And so when I went up on the campus, it's the first time I'd ever seen this campus. It was gorgeous, beautiful. So I decided that's where I wanted to go. And that's the only school I applied to. Because nobody in my father's family parents had ever gone to college. So nobody knew about, applying to a bunch of schools or anything else. So I just applied there. That was the only place I wanted to go.
That's crazy, but that's amazing that you still have that little trophy. It says your name on it as well.
Huh?
It says your name on it still too. All of that.
It says poetry 1961 first, Ellissia H. Darley. That was my maiden name. Yeah,
wow.
It's there.
That's great.
So that's
I know
it was because of the campus. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you kind of touched on it before in San Diego. You were kind of to yourself and with your family and with just, it wasn't foreign to you to just be with, immersed with other people who don't look like you.
Right.
But how did it still feel to go to USD and be one of the only Black students? What did it feel like to experience that and at that time period?
Well, when I got ready to go to college, the first week I wore glasses and they were glass. And for the first time, I broke my glasses. And I was at that time very nearsighted. So it took 2 weeks to get the glasses. And so I walked around for 2 weeks. I couldn't see anybody. But I had decided before I started school that if people did not like me, they would not like me because of my personality or, something about me, but not about my color. And that's how I went into the building. And since I couldn't see, I have no idea how people received me at the beginning. I just decided that I was going to be fine. The first class, one of the first classes I took, I was a civics class, and the professor was talking about poll taxes and talking about, nobody paid poll taxes anymore. Well, my grandmother lived in Louisiana. She was paying poll taxes. So I raised my hand and announced that my grandmother was still paying poll taxes. And the class got quiet. He didn't have a response. Nobody said anything else, and we moved on. So a lot of times, if I said anything if something was said, it was kind of like if things just kind of moved on. Nobody said anything else because I was the one voice. And it's different because I was the one voice at the women's college, but there were other minorities. There were Hispanic, there were Asian in my class. At the men's college, there were more African Americans, but they were across the street and it was separate. So we didn't go to school together.
And how did you and your friend Maria meet? Was it just in the classroom, or you guys just saw each other? Hey, another Black person! Started hanging out
from Liberia, and I was so glad to see her. But she came our sophomore year, and she was a boarder, and so my family we kind of adopted her, brought her home, and she cooked for us, and we cooked for her, and that's how we got to know each other. And we've been friends ever since.
Yeah. And I remember you and I talking, Lisa, you said that you were looking to be an anthropologist, an anthropology major, but
Yeah.
that didn't work out. Did you want to tell people on why you decided to change?
Well, one of the things was I was a social major, but I really wanted to be an anthropology major, but didn't have enough classes. And one of the professors was her name was Mrs. Shields. She had trained under Margaret Mead. And when they
Wow.
asked me about crazy things that happen in terms of uh, I don't know about prejudice, but people's assumption about us. She had these calipers. You know what calipers are? They're like claw. I mean, they look like this, and they measure your head. And well, she was measuring everybody in the class, and she categorized each one of us. And I'm the only one in that one little category. And then she measured me, and I didn't fit. So then it was another time that folks got quiet because my arms and my leg, nothing fit to what her category said I was supposed to be as as a Negroid, in quotes.
Yeah. Just showed how silly that concept was.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the only reason I didn't get the anthropology degree, well, they just didn't have enough classes. So I ended up with a social degree. And I only because I wouldn't take geography, I didn't end up with a social science degree.
Wow. Wow. So what were some obstacles and victories that you faced at USD? I mean, you had such a positive outlook being a young Black woman on that campus, and I think that's amazing that you felt that way and you had a home with your family and you tried to not see color all the time, although color does exist. I'm not saying be colorblind, but you have that kind of lens. So what were some victories and obstacles that you did face at USD?
Well, one major thing was that, the fact that I graduated from college because, like I said, no one in my family had. My dad, we found out after my dad died that he was in World War One and Two. He came from the South, um, you know, never talked about what went on, but it must have been really tough for for him at 16 or 17 to go in the Navy back in, World War One. But he worked his way all the way up to being a chief. Um, but in terms of, I don't know about, I think challenges sometimes would happen. I know I told you about they were having a play and they needed a maid in the play and they came to me to be the maid in the play. And I'm like, excuse me, number one, I'm not a theater major. Number one, you had to hunt me down to come ask me to do this. No, I'm not going to be a maid in a play. Um, Assumptions that I lived in the ghetto because I lived in Southeast San Diego by the nuns. The nuns were cloistered, semi-cloistered, so they didn't know anything about the city. And the day that they were talking about me in my social class, I wasn't there, but my friends told me about the discussion because we had to turn in this demographic description of, ourselves. And they asked how much money you got once a month. Well, I put down like $30 because my mother paid for my car. My mother paid for the gas in my car. I wasn't a boarder. Most of the people in the class were boarders. So their parents sent money for them. And because I put that $30 down, the nuns decided that I was poor. And my friends had to tell her that I was the one with the sports car who was giving them the rides. Okay. So a lot of times it was just assumptions about who I was. Another friend who lived in a trailer park assumed that I was on scholarship, and I had to inform her, no, I paid my own way. I had the money to pay for myself. So just people making assumptions, and but it didn't stop me. It was one of those, like I said, it happened, and we moved on.
Yeah.
And when you're by yourself, it's I guess because it's my attitude. I get up, I told Kelsey, I get up chirpy. Okay. I get up in the morning. I'm a happy person. It takes a lot to make me angry. It takes a lot to get me down. And I had a goal. I was going to graduate. I was going to finish. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't anything, nothing was going to stop me.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Just focused.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
but also for the fact that like I said, I had all that support at home.
Yeah.
You know, my mom and dad were there and my friends were there. So.
Yeah. That makes a world of a difference. So
Mhm.
what were some, when you think back, what were some really good times and just fun moments back then that just make you smile or make you laugh?
Okay. I thought about this one. You wanted a funny one? Um, I told you that I had a car. So I picked up, they used to have these mixers when the ships would come into port. They would advertise the ship movements. The nuns would have these mixers for the officers. So two of my friends needed a ride. And I said, okay, I'll give you a ride, but I'm not going upstairs to the mixer. I'm going to stay downstairs in the lounge and watch television because nobody was going to be there but white guys. And I wasn't interested. So I guess about a half an hour later, they come running downstairs. We got one for you. We got one for you. I said, what are you talking about? So we go upstairs, and in the mixer, they point this guy out, and I fall out laughing because he's got a dark suntan and a crew cut. I said, you don't even recognize one of your own with a tan. This is pitiful. But they did introduce me to two African American first lieutenants in the Navy. So I did meet two African American first lieutenants over the time at I think my senior year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your
But,
first husband was a USD student as well.
right. We grew up together. Yeah.
Okay.
But he was at the men's college. He was on the starting five of the basketball team were 4 African Americans and a Puerto Rican. And one of them was a guy that I grew up with. We had known each other since we were 12.
Okay.
We went to the same parish and everything.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 1966, you got your sociology degree. And when you and I were talking, you said that you also got your teaching credentials in 1967.
Right.
So was, being an elementary counselor, was that always your dream? I know, but besides the anthropology direction that you had for a second, but were you pretty focused and like, this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life as a counselor?
What happened was I worked that summer in between 66 in my after graduation Head Start, and I loved working with the kids, and I decided I wanted to get go into education. Well, when I came back to the university, they looked at my degree and said, you can't get an education degree with a sociology major. Well, I had 4 minors, one of which was English Lit. And will you be willing to take one more course in English Lit? I said, yeah, that would give me 33. I said, okay, yes. So that was my teaching minor. And that's why I went into elementary ed. But I had to do the elementary ed in order to become I just wanted to be a school counselor. And back then you had to teach 3 years. And so that's how I started teaching. And I loved it. I loved teaching. I loved being a counselor. That was one of the best things I could have done. I really loved doing what I was doing, in terms of teaching and counseling kids. And I loved working at the elementary level.
Yeah.
Wasn't interested in moving up until I went to central office. And I went to central office. I was there for 14 years. And a lot of what I did there had to do with staff development, training new counselors, creating curriculum, writing manuals, that kind of thing in Fairfax County Public Schools.
What was one of the biggest lessons that you learned as an elementary counselor? I know you spoke to me about something pretty profound.
One of the things is that I don't care, I looked at the question when somebody asked about, the movements and all of this. I've done the marches. On January 21st, 2017, I was downtown with the rest of the women marching. But marches and movements are all great, and it's fine to do those. But my thing has always been, what can you do on a day-to-day basis? How do you make a difference every single day? What do you do when you see something that is an injustice to anyone? How do you speak up? How do you get the courage to speak up? Because sometimes, especially an elementary counselor, a lot of times I was the only counselor in the building. So it wasn't like being on a team in a high school or a middle school. And you had to stand there between the administration and the teachers and ask the question, why are kids being treated this way? What can we do better for children? Whether it's about race or their intellectual ability or just anything. So my thing has been, how do I make a difference every day? When I went to central office, one of the things was I went to job fairs for counselors. And the first job fair that I didn't go to, when I got to training the new counselors in the fall, I had only diversity I had was age. All of my new counselors that year were all white women. And I said, this will never happen again. And so when we went to job fair from then on, I was a greeter for all the counselors that came through that door. I got to, to check out who they were. And if they scored well on our screening interview, then I made sure to send out to my principals their names and their credentials and why they should be hired in their school system. So that was my little way of making a difference. Challenging the system when, people would call me and they didn't know who they were talking to and say, well, my school and this person really shouldn't be here. And I said, that's the reason the person should be there, because I do know your school. And sometimes I have to look at the phone and wonder, do you really know who you're talking to here? But to me, you have to take the movements and the marches, you have to take them back into wherever you work or on a day-to-day basis. And you don't have to be nasty about it. You don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to, but you do have to make sure that you stand up. Plus you call out folks and let them know it can't only always be the minority person challenging the system. Where are the rest of you? You see the same thing. One of the times I went for a leadership conference with the American School Counselor Association, which had 10,000 members. And they showed a slide presentation at a luncheon. And in the slide presentation, all of the African Americans were seen as very poor. They were dirty. There was very negative, pictures of them. And so I cried. I really cried at that luncheon. So after that, later on that evening, a few of us got together to discuss it, to just, have drinks. And they were talking about the slide presentation, how wonderful it was. And I told them I hated it. And they asked me why. And I said, because, and I told them why. And they said, well, I didn't see that. I said, no, you didn't see it because they didn't represent you. And a lot of times people don't see it because it doesn't represent them. And so you have to call it out and help them see what's going on, how people are being represented, when it's a negative connotation of how we are or who anybody is. So.
That's so true. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we can do is call it out and be good representations. And it's true, most people don't recognize that the representations of certain minorities isn't represented in a great way, but we can recognize it, because we understand it. So that's such a great approach to so many things. Now, I know that you mentioned back in 2016, you were here at USD.
Yes.
For the Black Alumni Network reception, right?
Yes.
And so BAN was dormant for about 3 years, to everybody on the call. And Ellissia, she was on our first relaunch of our virtual call in May with Miss Pamela Gray Payton. And when we found out that she was a 1966 grad, we were shocked. We're like, they exist? They're real? She's out there? So I just want to ask you, what made you want to kind of come back into the fold and want to come to another Black alumni event?
Well, the first time I met the folks for BAN was when I came for the reunion. I got a notice that they wanted me to come to the reception. So I said, well, sure, I'll come. And I took a picture, we took a picture and everything. And then after that, I never heard from anybody again. And then well, you know how you get the alumni stuff in the emails. And I looked and I saw something about Black alumni. I said, wait a minute, let me take a look at this. And so when I clicked on it and found out, and you know how you look at the registrants, and I went, 60 people, my God, let me find out what's going on here. So that's why I decided to you know, find out what you all were doing. I was so happy to see it. You know, when you stand by yourself, it's nice to see that there's a whole bunch of other folks later on. I was
Yeah.
as shocked as you were.
It was amazing. It was an honor. It's still an honor to even have you in this space. Wow, that's a great story. Well, thank you all again so much for joining us in this amazing conversation. Ellissia, I want to thank you again for taking time to chat with us about your living history and the wisdom that you told us about your life. And I'm so glad that we can give you your flowers while you're here and just honor you. No, really, you can laugh, and I'm being for real, because we need to honor those who have come before us, especially those who've walked on the campus of USD who look like myself and Kaya and other Black and brown people. So I just want to thank you so much. And we will have you on a call again. So be prepared.